She took the papers, all that had enough left on them to be worth saving, and hid them away in a safe, dry place, far off from the hut. She never mentioned to the others what she had discovered, and they never knew. But from that moment she felt that she could not rest till she had learned how to read, how to puzzle out all that was on those papers. She thought and thought of how it could be done. Jerry would not allow her to go into town and go to school. She knew that without even asking. Neither he nor Wanetka knew how to read. How was she to begin? In looking about the house she saw, however, that many things there had labels with marks, and, guessing that those marks or words told what they were, she decided to begin right there. She took the cans of things whose contents she knew, and tried to remember the marks that evidently meant those words. Very soon she knew the combination of marks that meant tea, sugar, flour, and the words of that sort. Many times she met with words she could not connect with anything at all, and often made mistakes and got them connected with the wrong things. But she learned a little in that way. Then one time when Jerry and Wanetka had both gone into town, they came back with a magazine that Wanetka had bought because she liked to look at the pretty pictures, and Wanetka had insisted on getting for her a little child's book full of bright coloured pictures that she thought the girl would like to see. Neither of them realized it, because they could not read and did not even want to, but this little book was a child's easy primer, full of pictures that illustrated the simple words of sentences so that one could not help learning something from it, especially if one was interested and trying hard, as she was. After a while she had learned all she could from the primer, and she had saved the magazine that Wanetka had thrown away when she was tired of it. She knew now a fair number of words whenever she saw them, but she never found anything like what was on the cover of the burned book, nor in the least like the marks on the paper or leaves. She was not satisfied and was really quite unhappy because she could not make any more progress. Then Jerry agreed to go with a man who was anxious to spend a while in the Glades, exploring or doing scientific work, and wanted a guide and companion. They were to be gone 5 or 6 months, and he left Wanetka and herself to remain where they were till he got back. After he had gone, she paddled the canoe down toward the town one day and discovered, on the bank of the river, before one gets into Fort Lauderdale, a little house where there seemed to be a number of children sitting in rows and learning what she almost jumped out of her skin to find was some of the very words she knew. She realized then that this was a school. She had sometimes heard Jerry speak of it near the town. A pretty young woman was sitting on a raised platform and telling the children the words. Delight never knew how she came to do it, but she got out of the canoe, walked right into the room and up to the young woman, and asked if she could go to school there. The woman looked rather surprised, but said, "Of course, dear. Sit down over there, and I'll find out presently what you know." She found out later that the girl knew very little, except the words she had taught herself, but she was so desirous to learn that she seemed to pick knowledge up very quickly. The teacher did not ask her too many questions, for she thought the child was one of the Indians who often came down the river to the town. Some of them would occasionally ask to be allowed to go to school for a while, and the white people were always very willing to have them and never asked them many questions for fear they might become frightened or embarrassed and might never come back any more. Delight went back to Wanetka that day and told her what she had done, and Wanetka was very angry about it at first. But the girl begged hard and said she wanted to learn to read so that she could amuse herself, and promised to read interesting stories to Wanetka when she could do so. So that finally the Indian woman gave way, said she might go, and promised not to tell Jerry, who would punish her severely if he knew. She made her promise faithfully, however, that she would not have anything to do with the other children, and would come straight back every day when school was over, and that she would not tell the teacher anything about themselves or their lives. She went to school for more than 5 months, and in that time learned to read and write, not very well, but to some extent, and a little of other subjects. The teacher said she picked things up with amazing quickness, but this was because she was determined to learn all she could in the short time she had. The teacher used to teach her in extra times like recesses, when she saw she did not play with the others out of doors. Sometimes she stayed after school was over and gave her extra help, and frequently lent her books to read at home. She was very, very kind, and Delight became quite fond of her. Only once did she ask anything about the girl herself. She put her arms about Delight one day, and asked how it was that her eyes were so blue, that she did not seem like an Indian. Delight could not answer her, and as she saw that the girl was embarrassed, she did not insist on an answer, and never asked her anything of that kind again. Jerry came back at the time he had said he would, and she dared not go to school any more. She was very sorry, but, at least, she had done what she wished. She had learned to read and write. She was content. They only stayed at that place a short time afterward, for one day Jerry came back from the town upset about something, though he did not say what had disturbed him. They never knew, but in a day or two they had packed all their things up again and were off for another move. They went far into the Glades this time, and stayed there, longer than they had ever stayed so far in before. It seemed almost as if Jerry was afraid to come out, for some reason. At last, as their supplies had given out and they needed to move nearer to a town, they went up to the northern part, near Okeechobee. It was here that Wanetka became very ill. They never could tell what it was, but thought she had eaten something poisonous without knowing it. They could do nothing for her, and could not get a doctor, though Jerry tried, but could find none who would come. She died the day he returned, and they buried her there near the lake. It was plainly an effort for Delight to go over this part of her history, and she stopped for a few moments to wink away the tears. But presently she went on. We felt very bad and very lonely after that, Uncle Jerry and I. He has never seemed the same since. He never talked very much, but since then he has been so silent. He scarcely ever speaks at all, only when he's spoken to or asked a question and must answer. Uncle Jerry and I went to stay with Waneka's people, the Seminole Indians, for a while. I did not know their language and couldn't talk to them much, but they were good to us and very kind to me. So the time passed, till a few months ago Uncle Jerry began to be ill in some way, and he thought that the Glades did not agree with him any more, that he would not be well again while he lived in them. He left me with the Seminoles, and he went and saw some of his own people that he had not seen for years. He went several times, but he did